With the Investing News Network, I'm Scott Tibbles. Today, I'm at the Vancouver Resource Investment Conference. And joining me now is Brian Leni, who is founder of Junior Stock Review. Thank you for joining me, Brian.
Thank you for having me.
So, we're now towards the end of day one of VRC 2020. What are your thoughts on the sentiments here among investors?
I think it's pretty good, at least for the people that I've talked to. You know, there may be still a little bit of cautious optimism, but I think far and wide more people are looking forward to 2020. And you know, the VRC is a great way to start your year, and I always look forward to it. So I think it looks pretty good right now.
And given that, so you're saying that sentiment may be picking up a little bit. What is your assessment of 2019? How did that treat investors in the resource sector, and how did that treat you?
2019 was a great year for me personally. I think it really depended on how fussy you were with your picks. You know, if you picked right, you made some money, and I thankfully picked right, so it was a good year for me. But I think there was some losses, especially towards the end of the year. There seemed to be a lot of tax loss selling, and it was kind of preemptive this year. We saw it start, you know, arguably maybe the end of October, which is sort of unusual. And for me personally, I use that as a buying opportunity, and I bought those stocks that I've been following during the year, and you know, most of those stocks are up coming into the new year, so it's a good position to be in.
And what are some of the stocks that you picked right, if you could just throw off a few for us?
So the beginning of last year, unfortunately, it was on the back of a tragedy in Brazil, which nobody likes. But Champion Iron was probably my largest return of the year. It was a multi-bagger, and I bought them during tax loss season, and it was for a number of reasons. And of course, with the tragedy in Brazil, the iron ore price went up, and I think helped that stock move. But yeah, Champion Iron was a big one. And then throughout the year, there were numerous other ones. When gold really came into vogue kind of mid-year with what's going on kind of in the global system, that was kind of place to be, and I think it is going to be in 2020 too.
Okay, and so looking at this year, where's your optimism? What stocks are you looking at and putting your money behind?
So I'm still as picky as ever. There's certain criteria I have, and I stick to that. But I think the story surrounding the precious metals is compelling, and I think for investors you need to be in precious metals. Whether the bull market comes, you know, it's anybody's guess. But I think if you choose right in precious metals, given where we are, especially with the gold price right now, I think there's going to be some good returns. Other than that, I like nickel still. You know, last time we spoke, I was very bullish on nickel, and I still am. You know, nickel was the best performing metal in 2019, which, you know, not everybody is aware of, but there are some reasons for that, and I think we're, you know, on the precipice of a bull market there too.
Okay, and speaking of picky, so here at VRC, you gave a talk titled "The Biggest Risk in Your Portfolio in 2020." Can you just give me a little bit of a rundown on what you talked about?
Sure. So yeah, that was the title of my presentation, and I think everybody kind of associated with external events. So, you know, whether it's an impending stock market crash or the U.S. presidential election, you know, there's cause of concern with your portfolio, and I imagine some people would say that's the biggest risk. But time and time again, for me personally, the biggest risk to my portfolio is me. And I think in recognizing that self, and, you know, first I think you need to understand who you are. Once you understand yourself, you need to play to your strengths and focus your attention, and then of course be disciplined in whatever your chosen approach is. And if you follow that, I think you're going to do well in any market, not just a bull, but in a bear too.
Okay, what are some of the rules that you would apply when you're being picky?
Yeah, that's kind of where I led in. So I explained what I think you need to improve, and then what I use personally is a set of rules. And when I'm trying to make a decision making, I make sure that all my decisions are anchored in this set of rules. And you know, before I buy a stock, I look at those rules and make sure I'm not violating any of them, and go from there. So one of the ones that I employed more so towards the beginning of my investing career was to wait a day before trading a stock. You know, you can have a lot of emotions like FOMO, you know, that fear of missing out, or different emotions that may press you to sell or to buy. And I would wait a day. And in most cases, you know what? I just wouldn't even buy the stock. The next day, it kind of dispelled that emotion. And, you know, it saved me. It saved me more often than missing opportunities. And I think for people, that could be a huge plus to their repertoire of stuff.
Okay, and so looking more at those external risks that you mentioned isn't really the biggest risk to your portfolio. So 2020's already turned out to be quite a newsy year. There have been quite a few events that have been moving around the prices of commodities. Do you think this has set the tone for the year, or do you think it's going to be a quieter year?
I certainly think the external events they're going to play a role in however the market goes. But personally, I follow these events and I kind of take my guess or stab at how I think things are going to play out. But I don't put too much stock into being able to tell the future. I stick to the core fundamentals that make me successful in picking stocks, and that's what I stick with. So I look at the company. If the price to value ratio is there, then I invest, and I look for those catalysts to move it forward. And if the market just so happens to move with me, then that's icing on the cake. I think too many investors fall into the trap of thinking that they can say where the metal price is going and then try to invest accordingly. And again, in my experience, that usually leads to losses.
And at risk of falling into that trap, so obviously we're in an election year down in the States. My question is, when there is an election year like this, when there's been quite a volatile situation, does that change anything about how you operate as an investor?
Personally, no. But like I said, these events will certainly affect us. And I think no matter if, whether it's Trump, if it's a Democrat or Republic, I think in particular, U.S. presidential election is going to be really interesting, probably more on a social scale, because, the North America or the Western society is polarized. And no matter who wins, I think there's going to be, unfortunately, a repercussion. And what that is and what it looks like, I'm not sure. But there will be a consequence. But like I said, I stay with what I'm doing and I trudge ahead, and the rest is noise.
Okay, and so before we wrap up, just wanted to ask you, what would you say would be your favorite commodity heading into 2020? So obviously we've talked a lot about nickel in the past. Is it still your favorite?
It's hard to pick a favorite. Like I said, you know what? I think far and wide, if people wanted to look at something, I think you got to focus on precious metals. Yeah. I think that the underlying narrative that surrounds it is legit, and I see the gold price. If things in the world continue the way they're going, I think we could reach a new high in gold this year, and that means $2,000 an ounce. And what that does to the junior resource sector, specifically with the junior gold companies and silver companies, should be really interesting.
And so, last question. I'm sorry, I lied. So you've just before we started talking, you were talking about how there's news with Junior Stock Review. Can you just run me through an update on that?
Well, thank you very much. So for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been publishing a free newsletter, which I'll continue to do, but I'm going to reduce the amount of free research I publish, and I'm actually going to be releasing Junior Stock Review Premium in February. Yeah. And if you become a free subscriber today, you will save on becoming a premium subscriber in February. And if that interests you, I highly suggest you do it.
Fantastic. Well, then, I think that we will leave it there. Thank you so much for joining me, Brian.
Thanks, Scott.
Again, I'm Scott Tibbles with the Investing News Network, and I've been speaking with Brian Leni.